Alright gang, today we're going to be talking about drawing free body diagrams. A free body diagram is used to represent the forces that are acting on an object. And remember, a force is any push or pull that is acting on an object. Because a lot of times there are multiple forces acting on an object, it's a good idea to get a visual of the forces that are interacting with the object. Free body diagrams are what we use to do that. So for today, we're going to be using my man Terry over here, and we're going to draw the free body diagram for Terry standing on top of Soda Can Mountain. I have also drawn an artist's rendition of this scenario above. Now, because most of us are not as blessed as I am in the field of drawing, the first thing we are going to do is we're going to represent the object as a box. And before I even like to get started, sometimes I like to draw a circle around the object of interest. So my object of interest is Terry, and I want to show Terry as an object and all of the forces that are acting on him. So first, let's represent Terry as a box. Within the box, I also like to represent the mass. Since we don't know what the mass is, I'm just going to draw a letter M in the middle that stands for mass. So this is our object of interest, Terry the dinosaur. Check. Moving on, the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to identify all of the forces that are acting on Terry. So to get an idea of all of the forces that are acting on Terry, we like to look at all the things that are in contact with Terry. Well, within my circle, the only thing that's in contact with Terry is Soda Can Mountain, right at his feet. Now, since Soda Can Mountain is in contact with Terry's feet, it must be applying a force to Terry. Now, since Soda Can Mountain is supporting Terry, we call that a normal force. So we know there is a normal force acting on Terry from Soda Can Mountain on his feet. Are there any other things not in contact with Terry? Doesn't look like it. But there is one force that does not require contact, and that force is gravity. It's really going to be acting on all objects that are experiencing a gravitational field. Well, gravity is pulling on Terry, and it's pulling him downwards. So the force of gravity, Fg, is going to be pulling on Terry. We also call that his weight. We'll talk about that more in the future. So gravity is pulling him downwards, the normal force is pushing him upwards. These are all the forces that are acting on Terry. So now what we like to do is we like to represent those forces as vector arrows. The normal force, even though it is below Terry and pushing him up, we are going to start with that force from the box. Now from the box, that normal force is pushing him upwards. The size that I draw the arrow is representative of the size of the force. So the bigger the arrow, the bigger the force. The direction is represented by the arrowhead. I know that this force is pushing upwards. Well, we also have a gravitational force. That gravitational force is pulling him downwards. So once again, I'm going to start at the box and show another vector arrow that is pulling Terry downwards. Now this is a good representation of the forces, but to get a better idea of what's going on, we have to make sure we label our forces. This is our normal force pushing him upwards, and pulling Terry down, we have his gravitational force. So now we have an idea of all of the forces that are acting on Terry. But how are these forces going to compare to one another? Notice I drew them roughly about the same size, and they should be the same size because Terry is motionless. If he's motionless, that means these forces have to be balancing each other out. Well, how do I represent that? I can use these little tick marks, these congruent symbols, to show that these two forces are the same magnitude. So that's how we're going to be representing free body diagrams and forces using free body diagrams for all of our future assignments. Okay? What do you think about that, Terry? You doing all right job?